Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Jeannie Mikhailides, Director of Client Experience for Advanced Partners. We're so pleased you could join us. Hopefully you'll gain some great insights and good information from today's presentation. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please chat them directly on your screen. We have a partner back, the magic man behind the curtain, Alan, will be collecting those, and we will address all questions at the end of the presentation. This presentation will also be provided to you as a PDF if you like, so you can chat that in or just let us know at the end if you'd like a copy of it. I am very pleased to introduce our strategic partner, SyncStream. Michelle Kirshner is the Vice President of Sales for SyncStream. They are the leading provider of ACA reporting and have a specific expertise in the staffing industry. So Michelle, with that, I will blink off and I'll catch.
Thank you so much, Jeannie. Welcome everyone, and good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're living. But we are really excited to be presenting to all of you today. And really, from this presentation, what we really want you to glean or take away is to just be more informed and educated in regards to everything that's out for the ACA. There are so many things changing, and I'm going to dive into a lot of topics. So feel free, as we're going through, to type in your questions, and then we will dive into those. So let's begin. Today, what we're going to be going over is what's new with the ACA, the employer mandate and what that looks like. We're going to be talking about some real complicated factors that came into play. We're going to outline and define the IRS penalties. We're going to talk about audit defense and what that looks like. We're also going to talk about not only the federal filings, but the state filings. And then we're going to talk a lot about past year's filings. And then also in the compliance world is our EEOC that is requiring a 2-year requirement for reporting. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about the valued partnership. And Jeannie and I will come back on with our cameras at the end to do that Q&A. So let's ramp in on the first slide and get things rolling for all of you today. So what's new with the ACA? There are so many things that have evolved and came forward with the ACA that has really confused staffing and all individuals. So on June 17th, the ACA was challenged without the individual mandate that the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional. So what that means in any kind of verbiage is really the ACA is here to stay. As I roll down the slide, you're going to see some more points that I have, and you're going to see that the forms have been expanded to include the additional indicator codes that are related to ICRA plans. And ICRA plans might sound new to everyone. They are new. So I'm going to dive into them, and we're going to talk a little bit about them so that you know exactly what you're up against and what is being dealt with on the ICRA plans. Another thing that continues to happen is that the IRS is doing their job. They continue to send out the penalty letters for non-compliant employers. This is not going to go away. This is their due diligence, and they need to do this. So we're going to work with you and speak with you on what this looks like. We're also going to talk about the penalties continue to be increasing. And each year it can be for non-compliance, non-affordable coverage, inaccurate forms, and late filings. So we're going to dive into all 4 of those areas, and I'm going to explain what that looks like. At the end of this year, the good faith effort is going away. And I'm going to talk more about that. We have a slide deep in, and we'll be discussing exactly what that looks like so that everybody is aware of what that is. And then we're also going to talk about the no statute of limitations, meaning all of your ACA information needs to be held at all times. This is not information that you can disregard or purge off. You have to hold this information at all times. And then we're going to dive into what are the state mandates? Where are the states that are requiring not only a federal filing, but a state filing? And then we're going to talk about the states that are presently in litigation and bringing forward the possibility of a state filing that may be somewhere where you are today. On the next slide, we'll review over, and I'm going to dive into what this looks like. So let's talk about the ACA Employer Mandate. Full-time employees have a significant impact on employer for the following reasons. Employer is required to provide and file a 1095-C form for the applicable year. The second part that comes into that, as we slide in, is the employer may offer them the opportunity to enroll in healthcare coverage. So making sure that that employer is offering the coverage, putting the coverage out there, and making it affordable for the employees are the key pieces. Our third point that we're looking to dive into next is the employee could trigger a penalty if they qualify and or receive a premium tax credit through an exchange. So we need to make sure that we cover the employer, that they know exactly what this is looking like, and that the employer understands what that level of compliance is. So let's roll to the next slide, and let's talk about the complicating factors that really were brought forward and really started to really play a key role when we rolled in with COVID. So COVID really brought forward a lot of challenges. The tracking complexity for furloughed, termed, rehires, laid off, rehires was very complicated, which then brought forward the forms just got harder because individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement was brought forward. This has declared 7 new indicator codes. So the new indicator codes are related to a new type of an offer of coverage. And on the third slide piece here, you will see that on line 17 on the forms to the IRS, what has been added on the 1095-C form is for the zip code for the affordability calculation. All of that was pulled into play on top of everything that we had going on with COVID. So if you have an ICRA policy or you're looking at this and going, how am I going to pull this information together? Know that we have the expertise to help you through that. And when partnering with advanced partners, this is just one of the capabilities that's brought forward for you. Let's jump into the next slide here and let's start talking about what is this level of compliance. Everybody continually talks about, I'm getting this penalty letter from the IRS. The reason the penalty letters are coming is you have to make sure that you are giving complete and accurate information. If you do not give accurate information, you are going to receive a penalty letter. The correct filing is what protects you in the level of compliance to the IRS. Now, I'm going to dive into that in the next slide here and give you a little more info, and we're going to start talking about some deadlines. So let's start here first, because this is really important. For the past 7 years, the IRS has extended the deadline from January 31st to March. The IRS has said to us several times, we are not going to be expanding that deadline. That deadline is going to be due this year, January 31st, 2022. And this will be for the employee fulfillment of the 1095-C forms. The paper filing to the IRS, that date will be February 28th, and the electronic filing to the IRS will be March 31st. So those dates may seem new to you and may seem a little cumbersome because of the fact that we do now have a January 31st deadline in there. If the IRS is going to change that date, we will be informed of that in the months coming. As soon as we get that info, it is the first thing in our precedents that we pass it on to all of you. Now, as I said, we're going to be talking about the good faith relief. As we know, 7 years ago when this was brought into play, the good faith relief was really getting people acclimated to know exactly what it is, what they needed to do, how they needed to file. The IRS has come forward at this time and said, listen, you've had 7 years. You know what you need to do. Now let's make sure that we're doing this. So at the end of this year, that whole good faith effort is gone. So there's no more excuses, basically what I'm telling you, of the dog ate my homework. We need to make sure that you are complete, that you're accurate with your information, and that your filing is done with all of the correct facts and figures. On top of that, the IRS has brought into play also the no statute of limitations. So when you hear me saying that you can no longer, you have to hold or put into a repository all of your ACA information, it's imperative that you hold on to this, because if you file something and it's filed incorrectly, you have to be able to go back to those records and claim, this is what I did in 2015. If you get rid of that information, you cannot back it up to send it to the IRS to show them what you did. So when you hear me talking about, please do not disregard, file away, or for that matter, disregard and throw away any information, because it's imperative that you need that when you're going forward to prepare your defense with the IRS. Now let's roll on to the next slide as we start to compare non-compliance and penalties. As you heard me talking, there are 4 different areas that we can roll into where a penalty can come into play. A number 1 area is the failure to comply with the employer mandate, which is the 4980H, which can come in an A penalty or a B penalty. Or an employer with a 6055 or a 6056 can lead to significant penalties for employers. So another area in the quadrant that we're looking at is step number 2, the addition of penalties for late filing and failure to file with inaccurate forms. So if you've not provided the information or you did it past the deadline, there's also a penalty that goes on top of it. And the third part in our quadrant, as we're marching through, I'd like to share with you, because many people receive a letter and go, gosh, I don't know what this letter is. Again, with Advanced Partners and SyncStream, we're the experts in these letters and we know them in and out. But some letters that may include are 5699, 226J, 5698, and notice 972CG. I don't want you to remember those numbers. I just want you to keep them in your head so that you know. We have many partners reaching to us in the staffing world with so many concerns or issues that they're receiving non-compliance letters or failure to comply. So if those numbers are ringing a bell or you've seen one of them, afterwards we will give you information on how you can reach out to us and how we can help you prepare your defense and go back to the IRS with that information. And today in the 4th quadrant, what we're really bringing forward is the notification of non-compliance or the potential non-compliance are delivered to all employers through a series of letters that go directly to the employers. Some of the things that really happened through our COVID break is many people were not in their offices and the mail was coming in, but no one was opening the mail. So we've had a lot of difficulties that have come into play. Note that the IRS wants to work with you through this and really make sure that they are finding out the information, making sure that they can get it taken care of. So as we go through this process, we'll share with you some examples so that you can see what's next and what we're looking at. So now we'll dive on the next slide into some further breakdown on some penalties. When you hear me talking about penalties are increasing, things are changing, there's no statute of limitations, the good faith effort is going away, you have to understand that this is how it's laid out. And I'd like to give an example so that you can see from 2019 all the way through 2021. The example I'm giving you here is a 4980H A penalty and a 4980H B penalty. This lays out for you that in 2019, and I'm going to go over the A penalty, was at $2,500. In 2020, it increased to $2,570. And in 2021, it's now $2,750. What we're saying to you is it increases every year. You need to understand that it's your part to be compliant and make sure that you are compliant and keeping your business protected. I like to give an example on the bottom of the page. So not offering a penalty example is laid out like this. So let's say that you have 100 full-time employees. 70 of them are subject to the penalty. And that penalty amount, as we declared for a 4980HA for 2021, is $2,750. Per those 70 employees, that could give you a total penalty of $192,500. These numbers are real, and we really need you to know and feel protected that working with Advanced Partners and SyncStream, we can get you through this process. So let's dive next into the next slide and really pull forward what we're going to be discussing and reviewing through. There are risks in the penalty factors, and I like to do a little risk assessment. So as we dive into the risk assessment, I'm going to spool through a few areas, and there are about 4 or 5 areas that you can really look at. Are you at a hazard? A hazard is something that has the potential to harm you. And what does that look like? Are you not doing anything? What is the next step? So the next step, as you see, could be risk. Risk is a likelihood of a hazard causing harm, which could assess that penalty. Where do you fall within that quadrant? What does it look like? So now I like to pull up the risk meter. As we dive into the risk meter, a very high risk are companies not filing for multiple years. Companies that have not filed at all. We receive phone calls every day stating, gosh, I have not filed, or I missed a year. Could you help us become compliant? These are people in this very high risk area. Next on the meter level, we have that risk that's maybe moderate right in the middle. Companies that are relying on an ACA light solution, where the benefit administration or the payroll solution is trying to do it. In this area, there's a lot of complexity. A lot of people put together an ACA light program that really speaks to, they thought the ACA was going away. So they did the minimum they needed to do to get filed to the IRS. Well, now with all the complicated factors, it's making it very difficult. And we find that there's a lot of people lying right here in this ACA light solution. When we jump to the next level on the meter, you're going to see that you're at a low risk when you're relying on companies that they can come forward and help you through this process. When you hear me talking about all of the factors and areas that come into play, it's important that you're working on this information throughout the year so that you know that when you get to the end of the year, you've followed it along, you've tracked it appropriately, everything is in line, and that your books are ready to go and information's ready to be reported to the IRS. So let's dive into the next slide and talk about what audit defense looks like. Our ACA Audit Defense, as we go through this process, and as you hear me talking, we have several staffing agencies, outside clients reaching to us because they've received a penalty letter. How do they respond to the IRS? What do they need to do? How do they prepare it? What do they need to pull together? We help you develop a strategy with yourself and your agency to work with you, with the IRS on your behalf, so that you're represented and you know exactly what you need to do and the information that needs to be collected. Next down on the slide, we're going to see that we're working with an individual who is our chief legal counsel, and his name is Stacy Barrow. And we're also going to be having another PowerPoint presentation, and Stacy's going to come on our next one next week and review over. He has mitigated millions of dollars in penalty letters to the IRS. So he's the leading expert that really works in the Affordable Care Act to make sure that everybody is protected and brought forward to the best defense that they have. So let's jump into the next slide and start talking about a new thing that's come into play, which is our state filings. So not only are you required to file federally, but in some states, you are now required to do a state filing. As we piece down on the slide, you're going to see presently in Act is California, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Rhode Island, and Vermont. If you currently have employees in any of those states, you must do not only a federal filing, but a state filing. Now let's advance forward here, because what we're going to talk about next is that Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Minnesota, and Washington are all right now in litigation. That means that by the end of this year, on those states, we could hear that they are going to require a state mandated filing. We will keep everybody posted in regards to this, but Syncstream can support with advanced partners all of those state filings. Let's jump on to the next slide, because you heard me talking about past year's filings. As you know, the ACA went into effect in 2015. So what happens now is that we can go back all the way to 2015. If a client comes forward and says, I have not filed from 2015 forward, we can work with that client to become compliant so that they are not walking around with a target on their back. we will move them forward and get them from 2015 all the way through to the current year's filing. So if you're experiencing a client that is having this issue, please feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss all of that with you. Next slide, please. Another area of compliance that we are working with partners in staffing is the EEOC. And as you know, that portal opened again in April of 2021. During COVID, that portal was shut down and no reporting was accepted for 2019. So in April 2021, they opened it and said all reporting will be accepted for 19 and 20 reporting years. Many people get really confused. So I'm going to kind of go through this quadrant. And the first piece on quadrant 1 is who is eligible. I get a lot of conversation of, Michelle, who on my team, how do I know what I need to do? Is it the same numbers as the ACA? No, it is not. So on the EEOC, any employer over 100 employees, regardless of pay type, must file. So what that means is full-time, part-time, seasonal, everyone is counted in that count. Any employer who's over 100 must report for that segment for the EEOC. As we go through into the next piece of the quadrant, what you'll see is we offer full service support on this in the partnership with advanced partners. And then in the third quadrant, as we dive into it, we want to talk about California does require an expanded reporting for EEOC reporting. So if you're in California and you need that expanded EEOC 2 reporting, SyncStream can help you through that process in capturing and gleaning that information. And the fourth part of the quadrant, we really want to say to you that when you partner with us, this is something that we do complimentary so that you know that it's taken care of. We do have to seek more information from you because it's not all included with the ACA info, but we do get more info from you so that you know exactly what you need. And the deadline for this is October 25th, 2021. So let's jump in now on our next slide and we can dive into the next pieces and share with you, as I stated, we have a webinar coming up and the next one is October 13th. And on that, we're going to bring forward our Chief Legal Counsel, Stacey Barrow, who's really going to share with you all of the facets, what it looks like. Many people want to dive into and say, what does a penalty letter look like and what do I need to do with this? So we'll dive into all of those key pieces on our next webinar so that everybody can feel confident and comfortable about all of the Affordable Care Act and what are the next pieces. So I believe we are up to our question and answer, and I believe Jeannie is going to join me again, and we're going to come back on with some questions and answers. Ellen, I believe there may have been a few questions. I saw it blinking, so maybe there's some questions out there.
Let me get off mute here, and thank you, Michelle. Great content, and we do have some questions that have come in here. Thank you. So, and hi, Jeannie.
Hi, Michelle. That was terrific. And I just want to make a blanket. Everyone, this is all about a solution, not to frighten anyone, but we know it's a complex issue. So SyncStream, as a strategic partner, it's a third-party vendor outside relationship outside of advanced partners. But with their specialty in staffing, it's someone that we really wanted to introduce to our friends in the staffing industry.
And I do see a couple of questions came in. The first one that I show, it reads, how big can a penalty be? That's a great question. And I don't know if that's something that, Michelle, you might be able to take a crack at?
Absolutely. Do you know, we have seen several penalties, and I will tell you over the years, the largest one we've seen is roughly coming in at about 6.4 million. Now, that is not an everyday client that comes in at a penalty of 6.4 million. Many penalties can come in at the $100,000 range. It is a variant that is flexible and can move across the board. It really depends on the amount of companies, the EINs. There's a lot of factors that play into that. But I will tell you that the penalties are very substantial. and it is important to hold on to all of that information so that you can back up how you've reported. And it can be that sometimes it's just a mistake by simply checking the wrong box. So as complex as this can be, it can be a very simple solution on mitigating it and making sure that it's handled and taken care of.
Great. Yeah, that's great insight. I show another question did come in here, and it looks like Jeannie is having a little bit of technical issues, but hopefully she'll be back with us momentarily. The next question that came in, can you successfully defend against a penalty notice? Thoughts on that one, Michelle?
Absolutely. So what we like to bring forward and discuss with you is that's why we have our chief legal counsel, so that we can really bring forward that relationship is worked directly with our chief legal counsel. And if you reach out to me at the numbers below, if you have a penalty letter and you're in the process of going, I need to send information to the IRS, we can help you put together. And, you know, we use the keywords, your defense, to make sure that we can really defend and prove the information that you have. We have to review that information to make sure that you do have a defense, or it can be somebody who comes forward that says, Michelle, I just plain out did not do it. If you did not do it, you have no defense. So we have to take a look at that information to make sure that you have a defense. And then, yes, we do pursue that with our legal counsel so that they can submit the letter to make sure that it is covered to the IRS.
Great. Yeah, good insight. And Jeannie, it looks like you're back with us.
I am. I apologize. See the magic genie. I pop in and out. I lost my.
Yeah. So we have another question that came in, and this question reads, what can be done to audit prior year filings for accuracy and compliance?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Michelle?
Yes, I have great thoughts on that. So we can do a review. So when you hear me talking about that ACA light, I hear your wheels spinning. So you're knowing exactly, maybe you're concerned that you have submitted, you haven't received a penalty letter, but you're not feeling too good in your gut that maybe this wasn't done right. We do have an audit process that we can take a look at that with gleaning information from you, where you're going to stand or what that looks like. And it is best to rectify it and make sure that it is correct. So we can take a look at past year's filings and make sure that they are accurate. And if they're not, bring you to a full level of compliance.
Great. Yeah, that's good insight. Good insight for sure. I do have let's see, at least one more question here. I show this one reads, 95% of my employees have been part-time and I only have 5 full-time employees. This August, we increase from 45 to 100 employees, I assume. So how do I go forward with this as far as filings concerned? Any guidance or thoughts? You know, I think what they're speaking to is, you know, obviously a big change in the number of employees, and also there's a factor that, you know, some are full-time, some are part-time. You know, Michelle, how do you navigate different things like that?
Yeah, those are great questions. And I know you can see the information below. There's my phone number and the info about, and I really need to ask a few more questions so that we can get to that FTE, that full-time equivalent. So we need to dive into the hours of those part-time. We need to track and really find out if you are at the cusp or at the mark so that we can tell you accurately if you need to file. So for the individual that has sent in that question, will you please send me an email and say that you were on the webinar today, and I will reach right back out to you and we can set up a meeting and we can dive deeper into this offline so that we can answer those questions and get you to a level so you know exactly where to navigate next.
Great, thank you. So at this point, I think that'll do it for our Q&A session. Jeannie, I guess I can turn it over to you to close us out and wrap things up, right?
Sure, I'm happy to. Thank you, Ellen. And again, thank you, Michelle. Again, everyone on the webinar today, we appreciate your attendance. Do reach out if you have any questions. Michelle is fielding questions from participants or attendees today personally. Also, one thing I loved when I learned more about SyncStream and how they work with their clients, and your relationship would be with SyncStream directly, one-on-one. But they have Michelle, did you talk about your account manager service?
Yeah, I really didn't dive into it. I tried to keep it general, but I will share with you that when you connect with me, I then will set up your account and you will have a dedicated client service rep who works directly with you. So when you pick up the phone, you will always know that you are speaking with one individual. They are tracking your accounts. They will know exactly what you need, and they're watching your cadence and program to really say, you know, I'm going to advise you, you're doing this. We should really consider this. So we really use our best efforts to make sure that we're watching what you're doing and how you're doing. Because in the staffing world, we have many different areas, and I'm sure it's on the tip of your tongue to talk about that 13-week break and employees coming and going. And how do we track that? And what do we look at? We've got many different things that we can put into play for our staffing friends, and we create flags so that you know exactly where a client and an individual is when they come in. And then you're flagging them to know where Susie Pickle lands. If she comes back in 2 weeks, she goes right back into the cadence. So we're really following, tracking, and supporting you with not only logic, but a client service rep who can speak directly to your account, which is really important.
That is excellent. I want to make sure everyone understands that is a SyncStream account representative, and you offer this, Michelle, I believe, throughout the year with perhaps a monthly or every 2 month and a monthly touch point when it's far out. As you get closer to reporting time, as I understand it, you might increase that cadence to even once a week if it's shortly before deadline and there are things that need to be done. So you're very
Yeah.
proactive with your clients, correct?
Yes, Jeannie, that's great points. And what we really like to do is we want to meet with you on a monthly basis, because in the staffing world, there are so many things changing and updating. And you do not want to get to the end of the year and then go, oh my goodness, I've got all this work to do. If you start working on this on a monthly basis and really keep up on it, by the time we get to October, November, you're just adding in the final touches. Everything has been looked at. And then that is when we get to that September, October, we're looking at bi-weekly meetings so that you know exactly what's going on in your account. Once we get to November, we're talking about, are we ready to move forward? Do we have all of our information? Are all of our social security numbers correct? Are the employees' addresses correct? That's stuff that we've been working on all year long so that we're not panic stricken by that in the end. So once we get to December, if that January deadline is still in play, you are not only saying to yourself, I'm prepared for that, because also on your docket, you still have your W-2s. So those two deadlines coinciding with one another is going to be very, very difficult. So we want to make sure that we have you prepared with your best foot forward and that we're getting all of this information accurate and correct.
So Michelle, if someone is listening to this right now and if they would be a potential new client to SyncStream, can you still work with them for this reporting year? What does that look like if they haven't worked with you up to, what is it, October 5th already?
Correct. That's a great question, Jeannie. Prior to this webinar, I know that Jeannie and team had sent out some correspondence in paperwork of, do you need to enroll? Are you ready to go? So we have already picked up several of the clients and getting them ready. So this morning alone, I've met with already 2 staffing partners to make sure that we can get them in. It will be a quick move, but yes, we can get clients on board and ready to go and ready for this reporting year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We so appreciate you and your expertise. Everyone joining us, we appreciate you. Have a great day.
Thank you.